Hi everyone, this is Brian Hayes and welcome to episode 30 of the Music Mind podcast. Today my special guest is acclaimed upright acoustic jazz bassist Jodi Proznick. Jodi is one of Canada's top jazz musicians. She's also a successful record producer, composer and music educator at the highest level. Please enjoy my conversation with Jodi Proznick.
Listen, listen, listen to the river. Listen, listen, listen to the wind. Listen, listen, listen for the whispers of the morning. The wondrous day begins. The world is alive, hear it calling. World is alive, rain is falling. World is alive, day is dawning. Living in this world as if it were home. Listen, listen, listen to your breathing. Listen, listen, listen to your cry. Listen, listen, listen for the stirring of the oceans, the forest and the sky. The world is alive, hear it calling. World is alive, rain is falling. World is alive, day is dawning. Living in this world as if it were home.
Well, hi Jodi and welcome to the Music Mind podcast. It's great to have you here today as my special guest for episode 30 in the series.
Great to be here at the middle of the day here, but it's the wee hours of the morning with you in Australia.
That's right. I'm based in Australia and for our audience, you're based in Canada. Now, our audience have just seen and heard a fantastic clip, a video clip of, I believe, an original song called Listen. Can you tell us a little bit about Listen, how it come about, who wrote it, and just the process involved in getting to a quality production like you've done for that song?
Sure. Yes, I wrote that piece. It's a number of years ago now. And interestingly enough, it started out as a piece of poetry that I had been writing, a little bit of poetry. It was kind of a new venture for me. I used to journal a lot when my son was little, and we used to kind of make songs together in the kitchen, and these little songs would kind of come to me. And I was a young mom, and also my at the time my mother was really ill as well. We were dealing with some health issues with mom, so I wasn't exactly sure how all of this creativity was going to manifest into music creation because I just felt really busy with everything
Yeah.
going on in my life.
Yes.
So nevertheless, I just kept documenting pieces of poetry that would show up, or little songs or little melodies, or if I'd be playing at the piano for fun, I would record, a chord progression I liked. And over the course of literally years, I started to go through the basket of ideas and realized like I had a whole album worth of material. And then sort of started piecing it all together. And that song started out as a piece of poetry. And then I just sat at the piano and used the natural rhythmic cadence of the lyric to come up with the melody and the chord progression. Yeah. So, but then the premise of the song really was as I was dealing with my young son and my mom's illness, I would head out to the river. I live right here on the Fraser River in British Columbia. And I would often just find a lot of comfort just being out in nature in BC. I don't know if any of you have been to British Columbia, but it is a very green and very mountainous and oceans. It's a really beautiful place to live. And I just felt really grateful in those moments of like kind of overwhelmed that I would just get outside. And so the song really comes, I always like to say the Fraser River kind of gifted me gifted me that
Yeah.
song.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful, and the video clip, I assume, is in your neighbourhood. That's the river you're
Yeah.
talking about. It's
That's
beautiful.
the one.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that's where it's literally like, in fact, after we talk, I'll probably go for a
for a
walk.
walk. Yeah.
That's like right across the street from us. Yeah.
Well, that's a great backstory because it brings together the power of music. One of the things that really impressed me was the beautiful sounds. I believe it's your quartet and featuring
Mm-hmm.
a vocalist. So it was a
Hmm.
five-piece group. But the sounds on the instruments, you've captured them beautifully in the recording studio. The tenor
Hmm.
sax, the piano, the bass, the drums, and the female vocals, all to me had a sound that sort of evokes that the serenity of that, the nature that you showed
Hmm.
in the, it's not a normal thing of let's just get a band together and everyone have a bit of a bash and a crash and see what we come up with. To me, it feels like a really cohesive group. Those musicians, is that your regular, or was it your regular quartet at the time? Have you played together quite a while?
Yeah, so it's a great story. My band, the pianist, Tilden, is my husband.
Okay,
And
yeah,
we've been a couple for about 30 years now.
great, yeah,
The drummer, Jesse Cahill, so Tilden Webb on piano.
yes.
Jesse Cahill, our drummer, we started at a university the same year in Montreal,
Oh,
in
okay,
Quebec, Canada.
yes.
So I've been playing with him since 1993. We both ended up on the West Coast, and then he fell in love with my sister, and so he's my brother-in-law now.
Oh,
So that
okay.
was convenient. Yes.
Yes. Wow. Okay.
Yes, yes. So it's kind of a family band. And then Steve Caldestat, who's the ten wonderful tenor player,
Yes.
went to high school with my husband in Saskatchewan in one of the prairie provinces here in Canada. And
Oh,
so they've known
wow.
each other since teenagers, and he
Yeah.
ended up moving out here to teach at the university here.
Yes.
And then Lila Bialy, we both also grew up here on the West Coast. I'm a little bit older than her, so I was a little bit ahead
Yeah.
in, music festivals and stuff, and she was
Yes.
coming up. And then we reconnected uh actually right before she became a mom. So we're not always there's not always a lot of women in our field. Well, not a lot of women in our field to begin with,
True.
but
Yeah.
there's most of my friends do have chosen not to have children. So both Lila and I are also mothers of these beautiful young men, and so we connected over
Yeah.
just the balancing of the careers. And so she Yeah, we've toured on and off together. She was out here doing a joint concert with us. She was our guest artist, and I presented her with these songs and said, "Would you be willing to try these songs?" And she sang them so beautifully, and yeah, said yes to the project. So we're just, I mean, you could hand her a phone book, and she'd make the phone book. Or not that we have phone books anymore, but you could hand
No.
her like anything to
Yes.
read, like an instruction manual, and she would make it
Yes.
sound like art. So
Well, that's
yes,
a wonderful story, and it really
yeah.
reflects, that answers a question I had, because the sound of all of those musicians, no
Mhm.
one was doing the typical look at me, put me in the spotlight. Even the sound
Mm.
of the drummer, very sensitive, beautiful acoustic sound on the drum. So,
Thank you.
congratulations on all of that. I just want to
Thank
talk a little bit
you.
more now about composition, because
Mhm.
you do promote yourself, I guess, as a bassist, a composer, a producer, and an
Mhm.
educator. And I want to touch on
Mhm.
all of those things in our conversation today, because I think it's a great example of diversity. To
Mhm.
make a living in the creative life nowadays. I think it certainly helps to be something more than just a single instrument player. So I want to talk about composition. What's your approach to composition? I suppose my first question is, do you prefer to write alone, or do you also enjoy collaborations?
Oh, I both are very fun, actually. I have done both and enjoy both. I also like collaborating on album projects too. So that's always really fun. This latest release that I'm the leader of, a co-leader with my friend Amanda Tosoff, who's a wonderful composer and pedagogue and pianist in Toronto.
Yes.
We've co-written some music together. The one that we did, I actually wrote the lyric for, and then she brought it to life through her beautiful orchestration and everything. So, yes, so 100%. I mean, jazz is a collaborative art form at its core,
Yes.
and I don't see any problem, or I find that exciting of doing that at a slower pace as with the compositional process. Yes, most definitely. But this album is interesting with this album, Sun Songs. I with Listen, actually, I had written the lyric and I actually approached my husband and said, "Hey, do you want to co-write a song together for the record? Here's
Yeah.
some lyrics." And he just looked at me. He said, "No." I said, "What do you mean no? What do you mean no?" I was
Yeah.
sad. I was like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
He says, "No, no, fly little birdie. This is
Just
your
do it. Yeah.
story. You've gotta own this one. This one is really
Yeah.
personal for you." So
Wow. Yeah.
so this album, I did use a piece of poetry from a dear friend whose name's Celeste Snowbird, Dr. Snowbird. One of the songs she wrote the lyric for. But yeah, that album in particular was very sort of by myself at this piano behind me.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't know about you, but sometimes I just sit at the piano and sort of see what comes out. And as long as I'm documenting, my documentation usually comes through the my phone. But sometimes I just keep going to the piano and the same song just keeps showing up over and over and over. And then and one of the our my mentors at McGill, who's no longer with us, named Jan Yarchik, he spoke about how you should be able to sit down and kind of play through your song
Yeah.
yourself, like beginning to end without having to write it all down, like in terms of just the lyric and or not the lyric, the chords and the melody, and just sort of,
Yes.
can you do that? Then it's sort of coming from you and less about the head, like working it out as you go. But
Yeah.
that's also a fun process. But for me, this album was very much sitting at a piano, letting the song keep coming out, and then I would try and document it by recording it and then
I think
revisit.
that's great. I think that's a real organic approach. And when you think about it, some
Yeah.
of the, if we walk outside of jazz for a while and look at pop
Mm.
music, the most successful band of all time, the Beatles, none of them could read or write music. So they were doing exactly what you were saying. They were sitting down with guitars and just piecing it together. And of
Mhm.
course, they didn't have the advantage in those days of the mobile phone, the voice memo, but I'm sure they were recording their efforts in some way. Your primary instrument, I guess, is the upright bass. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but as
absolutely.
a single note instrument, it's not impossible, but it's pretty hard to compose, I imagine, just on the bass.
Yeah, yeah, it's not impossible for sure. In fact, sometimes I've written a couple of contrafacts where another approach, like I had a commission piece that I wrote for a saxophone player out here named Corey Weeds, and he asked me to write a contrafact. He gave me some standards that he liked to play and was like, "Can you write something?" And it'd be neat if it was a bass saxophone like melody that we played together, kind of like Lucky Thompson and Oscar Pettiford, I'm a
Yep.
real fan of.
Yes.
And so I recorded myself improvising on the tune, and then you know, again, just transcribed myself and kind of, oh, that's a cool idea. I can use that again, or so there's a whole bunch of different ways of doing it. Another way I've done it is just I remember sitting with a student talking about like pivot chords and secondary dominants and all these like advanced harmonic substitution thing, and just sitting at a piano. We're like, okay, we're just going to write a chord progression right now. We're going to start here, and
Yep.
you're going to call out a concept and we'll use it and come up with a chord. And we wrote out this whole chord progression, and in the end I loved it. It's actually on the record. I was like, it was
Yeah.
sort of a theoretical exercise, and then I put a melody, and then I showed like you can have a really simple melody over these really rich chords that are moving in
Yeah.
interesting ways. So, these songs can come in a variety of contexts, in a variety of ways, and I think our job as creatives is to just be open and then document and not hold anything too tightly, just stay really
Yeah.
loose with all the stuff that comes forward because um that may not be the idea that you want to work with now, but doesn't mean it won't manifest later. And sometimes things take a while to kind of germinate and turn into something. So,
I think that's
yeah.
wonderful advice. Again, you just sort of talked there that it is possible to write a great piece of music from a strictly academic point of view, where it
Yes.
started as a theoretical concept as opposed
Yes.
to something that's been grooving in your mind for 6 months. So that's great. Let's move on to the acoustic bass. And
Sure.
today, I guess we could have called this podcast Women in Jazz, because we're going to see a lot of women in your clips playing jazz, and I think that's fantastic. It's certainly as a gender, you're wildly underrepresented, I think, in the music business, but certainly in
Mhm.
jazz. So the acoustic bass. It's a very manly instrument, just the physical size of this monstrous instrument with strings like
Yeah.
thicker than fence wire on it. How did you come to the acoustic bass? What was the attraction?
Oh, Brian, this is a great story. I'll try not to, I can be very long-winded about
That's
it and
okay. Yeah.
theatrical, but I'll
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
I'll try and keep it a little succinct. I
Yeah.
mean, ultimately, my father was a band teacher here in the Lower Mainland of Vancouver. So
Okay.
he was the high school band teacher that I was heading into his band program.
Right.
And the way it works here in Canada, we have elementary school. Sometimes you have middle school, but it's elementary school till grade 7, and then you pop up into high school for grade 8 to 12.
Yeah.
And so at the time there was a grade 7 band program. So that's where you first decide what instrument you want to play in band. And being the eldest daughter, the good daughter, I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, can you please like let me know what instrument you need in your band program and I
Okay.
will play that instrument."
Okay.
And I was like, and you know what he
Yeah.
says to me? He says, "I've always wanted an oboe player
Oh.
in my wind ensemble. I would love for you to play
Oh.
oboe."
Nice,
So
easy
keep in
instrument.
mind,
Yeah. Mm.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah, no. So keep in mind, I had piano lessons.
Yeah.
So I went through the Royal Conservatory piano methodology up till
Yeah.
grade 4 or 5, and
Yeah.
I was heavily involved in ballet. We had orff and choir and musical theater, and I was just a really artsy kid. And he also had every instrument at home because he's a band director, so he had like
Okay.
trumpet and clarinet,
Yeah.
saxophone, all the things. So he
Yeah.
wanted the one that he couldn't play and he didn't have, and
Yes.
it's kind of an exotic animal. So they found this terrible instrument. I mean,
Uh,
now I know it was like leaky pads
yeah.
and not set up well. It'd been
No.
in some closet
Yep.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And the fiber cane reed, so
Yep.
not a real reed. It was
Yep.
like plastic reed.
Yep.
And grade seven, they put me in the middle of the wind ensemble, and I couldn't, we're having to work so hard just to get any notes out, and they were
Uh,
loud and they
uh,
were terrible.
yep. Yeah, I can
And
imagine it.
so,
Yep.
yeah, so I know this is like, well, this has nothing to do with bass, but so what happened was end of grade seven, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. So I wrote him a letter and I went into his bedroom and I left the letter on his bed. And I was so for worried that he was going to be mad that I didn't want to
Yeah.
play the oboe.
Yeah.
So he comes into my bedroom. He's with the letter. He's like, "Oh, you don't want to play oboe?" I said, "No, no, but I'll play whatever else. What else do you need?" He says, "Well, I need a bass player in my grade nine big band." And I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
so I was going into grade eight. So I got to hop a grade and go into
Yeah.
grade nine, which meant I got to go on the band trips a year early.
Yeah.
And dad did not know how to play the bass at all. So I was like, he can't
Ah.
tell me what to do. And I was like, also because I had been front and center sounding terrible and embarrassed,
Mm,
the idea of being at the very back of the band,
yeah.
hiding, playing electric bass at the
Mm,
time was very appealing to me. So I was like, heck yeah, give me that bass. And I got a little book from the music school and started figuring out. And I had because of the piano background,
yeah.
two things, worked. One was the piano background meant that reading bass clef was easy, and it was primarily really simple bass lines,
Yes.
quarter notes,
Yep.
not hard.
Yep.
So I could sound really kind of successful right away. And then the other thing was my dance background meant that I had a really good sense of time because in ballet classes, you're like, one, two, three, and four, and one,
That's
two, and
right.
you're like,
That's
doing
right.
all your ballet stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how I was about 13 and then eventually got into grade 10 or 11 and the guys we had a big program, successful program when everyone was listening to jazz and I
Yes.
was too I saw Ray Brown play when I was 13 which
Oh,
just blew me away and
yeah.
I saw
Yeah.
Dizzy Gillespie, we
Yep.
saw like Shirley Horn, I
Yeah.
mean like all it was it was at the Lionel Hampton Jazz Fest so it was incredible.
Mm,
Um and so we were listening to the music and falling in love with it. And of course, it's Paul Chambers playing on all those famous records. And the
yes.
guys were like, we want you to play the upright because that's the right sound for the music.
For the music.
So
Yeah.
I started just playing the upright bass mainly to just, again, please the guys that I was like, they want me to play it. So, and
Well,
it was
look.
hard at first. It rips your hands off and like,
Oh,
oh, it's hard. But yeah,
intimidating.
but
I would expect for
yeah,
a young girl to be intimidating. But
for sure.
look, I want to. This is a great little segue into. I want to play a track now, a video with you and Tilden Webb, your husband, just in duo mode.
Oh, yeah.
There's certainly nowhere for you to hide in this one. You know how you said you wanted the bass because you could hide up the back and no one would see
Yeah.
you. Now this is a beautiful duo arrangement of the Gershwin song "Love Walked In." So I
Mhm.
want our audience to just enjoy this, and then I want to talk a bit more about your approach to the bass. But let's have a
Sure.
look and a listen to Love Walked In, you and your husband in duo mode. That's fantastic, Jodi. Beautiful bass playing.
Thank
I
you.
would recommend for any of the audience to just rewind that and close your eyes and listen to what you're playing on the bass. Because a question I have, I got to interview Pamela Williams, a wonderful saxophonist from Los Angeles, in one of the early episodes of the podcast. And look, she's got one of the best sounds in contemporary sax that I've ever heard. And I got to ask her, did she think the saxophone had a male and female gender to it? Is it a
Mm.
different instrument when played by a female? Now, what I hear in your bass playing, I grew up, I never got to see Ray Brown, but I loved listening to Ray Brown and Ron Carter and Rufus Reid. And,
Mm.
I'm interested in, I'm not what you'd call strictly a jazz musician. I just like all types of music. But I got to see Niels Henning Orsted Peterson play with Oscar Peterson here in Australia, and that's a memory I'll never ever forget. One Oscar Peterson live, and Neil's on bass was just phenomenal. In Australia, we only have one that I can think of, one high-profile female bassist. I don't know whether you've ever heard of her, Nikki Perrott. Have you heard
Yes,
of?
I've heard of
Yes,
Nikki, of course. Yes.
wonderful player and wonderful
Yeah.
singer. But she's the only Australian female bass player that I'm aware of, upright bass player, that has any sort of wider recognition. So I want to ask you that question. Do you think there's a female approach to playing the bass, given that most of your reference points, if not all, has come from the male approach to that, as I said, monstrous instrument. It's like playing the tuba, it'd be like picking up the tuba. Like it's an intimidating instrument, I think, for anyone. But what
Mhm.
have you got a view on that? Do you think there is a female sound on the bass, or is it gender agnostic?
No, I don't. It is very, I think it's very agnostic. And part of it, is really, it was interesting that in those initial years when you were looking to mentors or to people who were playing the instrument, and then I look at myself in the mirror and I'm 5'2", like I'm a tiny gal with
Yeah,
very small
that's right.
hands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And I would look at, I'd have Mingus on my wall at university, and I was
yeah.
like, how do I sound like that with this, the reality of my physicality, right? And
Yes,
what I've come to realize is that, first of all, no matter what gender you are, you're going to bring your physicality to the instrument. You're going to have a unique sound. I don't think being a woman makes my sound any more unique than there's a lot of men players in town here who are actually just a little bit taller than me. So I think there's,
okay.
I
Mm.
don't, and also like it's more of an attitude. I'm a pretty tenacious, fiery person. I love I always say my mom was in the rodeo, and she had like we have bull riders in the family. She used to do barrel racing and stuff like that.
Yes,
And it's that sort of like get on the horse and get going. It's the same energy that, I love our Canadian women's hockey team and stuff. They just like get on the ice and go for it. So I
yes.
think it's more of an attitude than a gender specific.
How do you approach duo playing? Because you're incredibly exposed in a duo. There's nowhere to hide. And what I loved how you and your husband worked in there, it was beautiful interplay. You kept out of each other's road, and yet collectively the sum of the two of you was much more than the individual. What's your approach when you're playing in a duo, knowing that there is nowhere to hide? What are you mentally thinking of? Say when you were playing Love Walked In, what was going through your mind, if anything, as you were playing that, accompanying
Hmm.
Tilden there?
Well, I think that, I think the answer to that question is when you're playing duo is to be, I was imagining that we have satellite dishes that they're turned out and you're really trying to sink into the collective sound that is being created. So it's less about thinking about anything and more about sort of this heightened awareness, sensitivity, being able to be responsive and nimble without ever, for us anyway, in a tune like that, sacrificing at that buoyant swing feel, and Yeah, and then being able to kind of tone down and be more accompanist when it's your partner's turn to solo, and then they'll do the same for you, when it's this beautiful dance that can happen. And I would say as I've gotten older and just more um having more flow in the instrument or just more trust in my own contribution. And ultimately, when I'm playing with my husband, we trust each other
Yeah,
implicitly. But I love playing with musicians who have that sort of wide-eyed, deep listening energy. And I think it's that deep listening and that generosity of spirit, um, that's connected to these core values of playing with a beautiful sound and playing with with time, a great time feel, being able to trust your own internal time, and then lock in with the people you're playing with to find that collective beat. I think all those principles are really important. And then finally, the last principle would be just to be aware of your harmonic options and be able to adjust and adapt if you're hearing the soloist go somewhere or the drummer goes somewhere, either with, rhythmic stuff or harmonic stuff, that you're able to kind of shift on a dime, respond, or choose not to, those sort of in the moment choices. But honestly, at this point, I don't know how you feel, Brian, but like I'm not doing a whole lot of thinking with thoughts as I'm playing. It's more of a whole person, whole brain experience at this point where, I think I don't know if you know Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, who talks about the flow, the optimal experience. It happens in sport and it happens in music. And after you've been doing this a long time and you're able to ground your nervous system, you can just stay really open and responsive, which is just like there's nothing like it. I mean,
yeah.
it's why we keep doing it. It's addictive. It's
Oh,
like
I agree.
it's such a beautiful way of being in the world.
I think so. I loved your analogy of the two satellite dishes
Yeah.
pointing out.
Yeah.
Because often
Yeah.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
musicians, it can become, if we're not careful, it can become a little bit, look at me, pointing in.
Totally.
I've got something to show you here. Have a
Totally.
look at me. Tell us about your current role or roles in music education.
Sure. Yeah. Currently, I am the director of jazz studies at the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra School of Music. So, our beautiful orchestra here in Vancouver, professional orchestra, has a school attached to our concert hall, which is a very unique and really special relationship. And so way back when the school opened about a year in, our maestro Brian Maltovi invited me to come into the school and said, I would love to start a jazz program here at the school and would love for you to kind of launch it for us. So I started off in 2013 with a jazz workshop in the summertime. It's a beautiful facility with, you know, Steinway Grands and a beautiful little concert hall, and just it's awesome. And we started with one little combo and then eventually have grown to, I think we have about 500 students just in jazz now. So
Wow.
about 16 ensembles, our youth big band, our honor big band. I teach jam classes for seniors. So over 55 people are retired and are coming back to music. We do concerts, what we call them relaxed concerts for neurodiverse folk. And the school has a huge string program, winds, brass, percussion. We have different instruments from around the world as well, like sitar and tabla and traditional Vietnamese and Chinese instruments. Yeah, so and the early years program. So it's quite an amazing place. And
Fantastic. Yeah.
they built to a point where they hired me as to be, I was sort of the department lead and teaching a lot, but also teaching at a couple universities. And eventually I just got scooped in to take on this director role to launch it further. So that's my main teaching gig, but I do a lot of adjudicating and workshops. And I've been a faculty member at the Banff Center with actually Aaron Chulai from, I don't know if you know Aaron, he's the Australian Art Orchestra artistic
Oh,
director. So
okay.
Aaron and
Yeah.
I got to hang out, and I met a whole bunch of amazing Australian musicians up at Banff last summer. So that was
Great.
very exciting. I love them. I want to come and visit you guys. It's such a great place.
Oh, look, it
So
was
Banff,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
my prior guest to your episode was James Hill, a wonderful
Yes.
ukulele player. What an amazing guy! What an amazing musician! And he's turning so many people on. One of the things I just do private teaching here, but the cost of an instrument is often a real struggle for parents. But everyone can afford a ukulele. And what I love in James' podcast, he just plays the heck out of it in all different styles. And I think he's doing some wonderful things, again, from Canada, just introducing music. And he explained that in Canada, the ukulele is sort of a pathway within the school system there to introduce people to music, to just get them into music as young children. So I think in Canada there's a lot of great things happening, as there is in Australia. I want to come back to a little bit of you in performance mode again
Sure.
here, because one of the great things about a musician like you is you're doing incredible things in education, but you're visible out there as a player. And I think that's so important. Don't you agree? It makes all the
A
difference.
100%. I
Oh,
think the magic of our program is that I call it the artist mentor um, sort of framework for education. So it is really important for students who are serious about music and wanting to go on to see active practitioners doing the thing, because it's them being aware of like a process of like, oh, Jodi's writing an album right now, and I might chat about it, in the lesson, and then they see, oh, then it is an album, and now it's being promoted, and they follow you online, and then they come to your show, and they sort of get this almost like they get to witness the process of what it actually means to make stuff and put it out in the world. And that can be very inspiring for them and encouraging, right? It's because I keep saying, it can feel like music industry is the Wild West. There's a lot going on. There's so many different genres and so many different pressures and so many different things and people's opinions. But it is actually a really great industry, and there's so many facets of it, from production to composition to performance to education, but not to mention like the arts administration piece, the marketing piece, design, curation of festivals, curation of concerts. Um,
absolutely. And all the
there's so
technical
many
services.
things.
Yeah, the
Oh,
technical service,
this,
sound
yeah.
and that. I loved how you called it the Wild West. To me, the
Yeah,
music industry, it sort of swings. It can be the Wild West, or it can feel like a total closed shop. There's no
mm,
way for me, if I'm a young player, how do I get my toe in that door? They'll slam it
totally.
shut on me. So I think, and the real reason I do these podcasts is to just, I call it the music mind, because it's a way of tapping into the minds of successful creative people and
Hmm.
sharing that with the audience is very wide. Some of the people don't even play an instrument, but they love the creative life and listening to
Yeah.
people. They might be a doctor, but they love listening and hearing about people living opposite lives to what their profession requires. So
Yeah.
here's you playing a musical theatre classic in jazz style, Surrey with the Fringe on top.
Oh, yeah.
You're with a drummerless trio in this case. You've got a wonderful piano player and a wonderful jazz guitar player. We're going to, I encourage people to look at your social media and your YouTube and websites and that, because in this podcast, we're only doing quite short edits of this. But your piano player, who is the piano player in this trio?
Yeah, so this is Miles Black, and Bill Kuhn is the guitar player, and this is a trio I've had for 16 years. We
Wow.
actually just released a record with Scott Hamilton, the great
Oh, great
tenor
tenor.
player.
Yeah.
Yes, so we just called The Slow Road, and that album's coming out. It's actually out like last week.
Oh, great.
But it's inspired by Oscar Peterson's trio, cordless trio. That was the original gig. Was we did a concert to honor his birthday. And
Yes.
we loved playing together so much, we kept going. So this is
Wow.
yeah, from one of our clubs. It's a bit, it's I mean, it's just we have so much fun playing together. We never rehearse now. We just show up and we call it the triology,
It's,
like choose your own adventure. And we just
yeah.
start songs and co-create arrangements on the spot. And yeah, it's so much fun.
Well,
It's so
we're
much
going to
fun.
have a look just around your bass solo. We'll just hear
Sure.
a few bars before and a few bars after, but I wildly encourage the viewers to look at the full clip because the piano player is outrageously good,
Yeah.
as is the guitarist, as are you. It's a wonderful, very high level trio. Now, it's in a noisy club, and it's one of the
Yes.
things about jazz, unlike classical music. You're not there in your tuxedos, and neither is the audience. The audience is having a bit of fun. You play this solo with a lot of humour. There's some classic moments in this solo where you deliberately sort of play a few little quotes and go to the high end of the bass and the low end. There's a fair bit of humour in the way you play this. And
Yes.
and the audience naturally quieten down. It's amazing. Your bass solo at the start, they're belting cups and giggling, but as the bass solo develops, and the music quietens down, the audience quietens with you. You take them on that journey. Let's have a look and a listen to Jodi's bass solo, an old tune that came from originally from the musical Oklahoma. It's been around a long time. Jodi, that's fantastic. A lot of great humour there. And one thing that I suppose it disturbs me a little bit that here in Australia we have a couple of jazz clubs that are strictly listening clubs. And I enjoy going to those because, one, as a musician, I find it disrespectful. It grinds on me that you've got these wonderful musicians playing their heart out and the crowd can just seem to be like a Friday night drinks crowd sometimes. They don't realise it. Can you talk a little bit about, I imagine you have the opportunity in Canada to play in different clubs somewhere it is. Talk a bit about and how you feel as a musician in the the noisy environment versus the almost the concert environment. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes. You know, it's interesting. We have a club here in Vancouver called Frankie's that is very much a listening club, similarly to what you were describing. It's this at the very beginning of the night, there's an MC that comes on and says, put your phones on silent. This is a listening space. Once the set's done, you're happy to take your conversation, up in volume, but and they do go around and actually ask people to quiet down if they get a bit too rowdy. And the interesting thing, Brian, is that it's full every night. Like it's a packed house. People come. There's a whole demographic who do want to come and just be quiet and listen and eat some delicious food and have a nice glass of wine. So we're really fortunate here. And I have played in the opposite situations. And you kind of have to play differently. You kind of have to, especially as a bass player, the bass solos are just a quieter thing. So,
Yeah.
it's with people are like "Rah," in the corner,
Uh,
it can feel a little bit deflating, but and you do get used to it. But I've been finding, luckily, in this period of my life, most of the time I'm playing in listening situations. I've kind of cultivated. I've done it all. I've played in a mall. I've played with a Santa hat on. I've played
that's,
outside in the cold.
that's right. Yes.
I've gone from our like best concert hall to like
Yeah. On the
opening
back
a
of a
grocery
truck.
store
Yeah,
or
that's right.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done it all.
That's right.
Like in those
Yeah.
early years, you take it all. So for all
Yes.
those young musicians out there, take all the gigs. You do it
Yes.
all. Even the stuff that's really difficult, you learn so much. So play, play, play.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older and a bit more established, and more project based, where I'm doing less of the just like random pickup gigs, I am in more concert venues. And that's an interesting time because you do hold space in a different way, and different parts of your playing can come out. I mean, at least with triology, when we play, we can get really, really, really quiet and
Yes.
really explore dynamic ranges in a way that when you're playing in an out noisy club, you just kind of have to play full on. It's the level is going to be higher, louder as a general baseline. It kind of has to be. You have to play over the crowd noise. So yeah. So you play differently. But as a bassist, it can be very exhausting when you're playing in a room with a lot of people talking and clanking, and because it's just such a physical instrument. And the beauty of the instrument is when you can hear the dynamic range of the instrument, when
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Of
so
any
I
instrument.
it is
Yeah.
interesting. Totally,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
So just
So,
taking that one step further, I also had the chance very recently on the podcast to interview a player who tours the world with a major act, playing at venues where they're playing to 80,000 people.
mm,
Now, I said to this player, what's the stage fright story? What's it like playing on a stage in the spotlight with a major star standing there beside you? And, whilst he said the people are going to watch the star, but you are caught up in the fever by just literally by being a couple of meters away from that star. I said to him, what's the nerves like there? And I'm interested in hearing your take on stage fright or performance anxiety,
mm,
because what he said is he gets way more nervous playing at a little club with 20
mm,
people sitting within a small stone's throw from him than when he's got 80,000 faceless audience members, just a sea of people out there. And he said, it might seem odd, but he really doesn't get nervous in that environment. But he does get nervous if two or three great musician friends of his come to his house and say, hey mate, can you play us that version of whatever of some song where he's on his own and he knows he's got greatness in his lounge room. Tell us your story, because you're in a whole lot of different environments. First of
yeah.
all, what's been your journey with nerves or stage fright? Is
Mm.
it something that affects you, or have you largely had a free ride with that?
Brian, that's a great question. Oh, not a free ride at all. Not a free ride. No, I
Yeah,
know. Playing music is one of the most vulnerable things you can do on the
Mm.
planet.
Yeah.
It because it is so heart sent, like we're sharing our voice, our heart, like it's can be very scary. I always, when I work with young people, I always acknowledge like this is a brave thing to do. So
Yeah.
if you're feeling excited or nervous about it, that's normal. Like you should feel nervous. It is. It's like, you just want to do well because you care about it. We have this relationship with music and we care. So yeah, no, I started off with a lot of anxiety. I mean, like I said, the oboe playing didn't help because that just I was so exposed and it was so I just took me a long time to want to ever take a bass solo ever. I just hated soloing. Like I don't want to solo. I mean, that's changed a lot now because you talent is skill plus confidence,
Yeah.
and both can be cultivated over
Yes.
time. So you just have to trust the process that, it's step by step, drip by drip, more understanding, more experience, more repetition on your instrument, along with putting yourself in situations that help you to grow resilience. Even if it doesn't go well, you still will get through it. And then the next time you'll have even more capacity to deal with stressful or what seems like stressful situations. And honestly, most of the time I've learned that the worst person in the room in terms of criticism is my own head. It's not actually, people aren't actually thinking those awful things you think they might be thinking.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
But in those early years, I mean, there were a lot of tears, and a lot of
Yeah.
wanting to quit.
Yeah.
And part of it was, as you mentioned when you were asking me about being a woman playing bass, I mean,
Mm.
when I got caught up in the yes, but I'm small, and yes, but I can't play fast because I'm so small and I'm a girl and I have small hands. And like I was
Mm.
making excuses for like,
Mm.
yeah, and I had to like really switch out of that. And and the other big moment I remember, because I was getting my, so they, as we say in Canada, I don't know if this is a phrase, you're getting my knickers in a knot. My
Yeah,
mom used to say that's all
that's
like, get your knickers in a knot.
a well
So I'd get
accepted
my knickers in a
Australian
knot.
phrase.
Okay,
That's right.
okay, good.
Well
We're
accepted.
so
Yeah.
connected. I
Yeah,
love
that's
Australia.
right.
Anyway,
That's right.
so getting our knickers in a knot. And I remember thinking, I remember very clearly saying, either I'm going to quit
Yeah.
or I'm going to have fun again because it isn't paying enough for me to not have fun.
No.
And I could go do like law or medicine or something
Yeah, yeah,
more
yeah,
like,
yeah.
right? And so
Mm.
I made a decision that, and the other thing was I say this a lot to students I'm mentoring, and so I'll just share it here too.
Yes.
It's that
Yeah.
if you focus on your relationship is with music, and
Yeah.
music will never, ever, ever let you down.
Oh,
Music loves you
beautiful.
back.
Beautiful.
What can complicate things is when you're worried about what the world is telling you.
Mm.
So if the world tells you things or you hear criticism, you have to be mindful you don't let that get into your heart. But the other thing is when you get accolades, if you do get some success or you do get some positive
Yeah. Yeah.
reviews, you can't let that get to your head either
No.
because all of that is fleeting. Who knows what's behind it. I don't know what people are thinking or feeling. Maybe they're just in a bad mood when they came to hear me play, and that's why they said a mean thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, you can't control any of that, but I
No.
know that I can control how I take care of music, and music will take care of me. And once I figured that out, um, I held everything really lightly and loosely. I just didn't worry too much
Yeah.
about end result or success or
Mm.
whether, and that was big. And that has, and not only was it big just psychologically, but in how I even approached the instrument,
Yes.
because it meant that I was just more grounded, more breathing more, and that impacts your sound. I'm sure you play saxophone. So like the
Absolutely.
more
Yeah.
relaxed you are in your body
Yep.
and sort of that satellite dish out thing and delighting in what's happening and in the experience of the moment, the alchemy of the moment. And you're not holding on to something tightly, like I have to perform, I have to be good, I have to impress. That tension comes out
That's
in your playing
that's
too. So,
incredibly powerful. You said, I want to backtrack a little bit there. I think you said a very, very powerful thing, that your relationship is with the music. I want to move forward now to the Astara project. Is that the correct pronunciation?
yeah,
This
Sarah,
is
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
fantastic. I
Oh,
might
thank
start by
you.
playing. You've got a beautifully produced clip of a tune called Dreams and Olive Trees. It is spectacular. It's an all-female group, and
Hmm.
let's have a look at this first, and then I'd like you to talk more about this.
Bottom
Okay, Jody, tell us about the Astara project. Tell us more about that. What a fantastic group.
Oh, thank you. So the Ostara project grew out of, like a lot of stuff with me, it's sort of happenstance and conversations that happen, and then they kind of grow into a thing, and then we roll with the thing. So it was basically during the pandemic, I reconnected with my dear friend named Amanda Tosoff, and she lives in Toronto, but we were all sitting around at the computer. She's an amazing musician. I just love everything she does. We just mutual admiration society. We decided we wanted to partner up. I mean, partially we were just like not gigging and income was a little bit weird, but we thought, well, let's start an online education hub together, which we started and was actually relatively successful over the pandemic. We did some webinars and we started doing some online teaching and stuff like that. Anyway, while that was happening, there was a lot of the social justice conversations were starting to the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. And here in Canada, the Every Child Matters, the
Yep.
residential school reconciliation. And so, as we're working on our company and talking about all the dreams we had for what we wanted to do, all these conversations were coming up and we were sort of grappling with our piece in the story and what to do and how to help and if we can help. And so long story short, both of us have had, multiple Juno, which is Grammy nominations in
Yep.
Canada,
Yep.
multiple Juno nominations. We've had, we've been she won the Montreal Jazz Festival Rising Star. I've won the Vancouver, like as young women.
Yes.
And we were band leaders. And we felt like we wanted to pay it forward in some way, but not in a way that was um, kind of like there's places where people need to be able to tell their stories and get support. But for the most part, we just kept swimming, and we were like, how can we utilize our capital, our cultural capital, to just bring more positivity and celebratory energy to the conversation. And it was right as Rini Rosnes is one of our big heroes. She's from here. We love her very much. She's just like a hero, and she's, a little further along the pathway than both of us. And the Artemis thing was starting, and it kind of gave us a red light, a green light, pardon me,
Yeah, yeah, yep.
to because we were already talking about this. We were like, we saw other mentors, and Terry Lynn Carrington was doing some work around this. So we saw these older women sort of take this on as well. We thought, oh, well, we can be part of this conversation and ecosystem. So that's the long and the short of it. And then we ended up with a filmmaker who wanted to do a documentary project with us, and then my record label wanted to put more women on his label, and it sort of all just coalesced into a weekend here in Vancouver where we recorded a record, did a documentary, did a concert with a group of women who hadn't even met. And we kind of shoulder tapped these Canadian women from all across the country that I had been admiring from a distance forever. I always wanted to play with. And then we had this alchemy that weekend and made the first record. And then as we moved on, Amanda and I decided we wanted to have it be a fluid thing and be able to invite more people as we went along, and project by project sort of curate based on whatever we wanted to do. So we just released our second album, which the
Oh,
Dreams and Olive Trees was the first. And the interesting thing, and I love Australia because there's such a common conversations happening in Australia as there is
yes.
in Canada, being Commonwealth
Yes.
countries,
Yes.
and a similar demographic and population, and just navigating similar conversations around Indigenous
Yep.
folk on the land, as well as the multicultural aspects of our
Absolutely. Yeah.
countries,
Yep.
and the way we do government and all that stuff. Um, so the next record, Roots, was about all these women. My background is Ukrainian, Polish on my
Okay.
dad's side. Amanda's family was from Bulgaria. Alice and Al was half Chinese, half Jewish, with family that were, her grandfather was in a concentration camp
Mm.
in Auschwitz. Rochelle is Quebecois. The Quebecois have been here for 400 years. Like there's like long history with the land, and her father. Then we have Shruti Ramani, who's an immigrant. She moved here from Mumbai, I think around 6 years ago. So she brought her traditional Hindustani classical meets jazz. The next record, we have a friend who's from the Caribbean. Her family is from the Caribbean. There's another indigenous Haida Gwaii artist. So this idea is like, what can Canada and essentially Australia offer the world?
Yeah.
And how do we do it through the arts? It's not just about gender. It's really about when people sit around a table and tell their stories, you can't hate them. You can't. You can't other them. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same things. And all of these stories of leaving and coming here are often full of like so much courage and risk and vulnerability. And then this idea of like in Canada, even though I never been to the Ukraine, when the Ukrainian war hit, I felt it viscerally because my mom did Ukrainian Easter eggs. We did the traditional Ukrainian Christmas Eve like feast. And so I was still connecting through the art, through the music, through the food. I still felt this connection to this culture that I was, had been quite removed from really, but it's the art. It's the art that
that does it. And look, if you ever doubt that you're doing some wonderful things in the world, let me tell you, that Dreams and Olive Trees, that is world-class music. The composition is beautiful. The players, I couldn't get over, the all-female group. Who's the lady that plays the flugelhorn?
That's Rochelle Carrion. Yeah,
well,
she's amazing.
well, watching Rochelle play the flugelhorn, I mean, there's an instrument, the trumpet / flugelhorn, that talk about male-dominated instruments. So you think of the great Freddie Hubbard, the late great Freddie Hubbard.
Yes.
Flugelhorn. Now, Freddie would literally blow the thing straight. It was all about power and energy, but Freddie approached the instrument in a way that he eventually completely blew his lip out and could no longer play. He had to retire from playing because he just played in such a way that was so bad for his body. Rochelle is playing some incredible range on that flugelhorn effortlessly. And there's, if I just send a message out to the viewers, if there are guys blowing their head off on brass instruments, have a look what that lady achieved on that instrument effortlessly as a female. It's wonderful. And the same could be said with all of those players. The sounds, the drummers sound. It's just a wonderful, you are to be congratulated and pass on my congratulations to that entire group. Because
that means a lot to us.
it's absolutely wonderful playing. And it would talk about, women in jazz. What a great example.
I appreciate that.
Do you know what I mean? If I'm a 15-year-old girl at school loving my music, but it's a guy's world, it's a man's world, can't do anything in that. Well, you guys are proving that wrong. One of the sayings in Australia is, and I'm sure it's the same in Canada, that, if you find something you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life. Now, I just want to play, I think it's so true. I just want to play a little 30-second clip of you in the back there playing the bass at a little jazz club, playing a blues called Good Morning Blues. You're there with I think it's a quintet or a whatever. There's a trumpet player, a tenor player, piano player, drummer, and you on bass. Now, the reason I want to play this clip, it's just a 12-bar blues. You must have played a billion 12-bar blues, but you have got a smile that they can't wipe off your face. I want the audience to watch when you're just grooving in the background. You are the epitome of someone, I believe, who has found something they love doing, and you are enjoying every minute of it.
Here's what my love you, baby, and oh, I love you oh so strong. Here's what my love you, baby, and I love him oh so strong.
So, Jody, one of the your four tenets of what you do is you list yourself as a producer. What exactly that can have different meanings? What is your take on the definition of a producer? What does it mean for you?
Well, I think a producer at the end of the day is meant to support the artist's vision for not just the music, but also how it how it gets shared into the world. Like what's the story behind the music, and is the album kind of grounded in like something authentic to the artist, and then how do we create that authenticity through the sounds we create, and more importantly, I think for me, I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got is to curate your life well. It's also to curate your project well. So the producer's helping to pull the team together, the right synergy of personalities and strengths, so that you don't have to do much. Everyone's just so competent and capable and excels at their part, but you have to see the whole picture. So your job is to see the whole picture to make sure that the right people are in the room at the right time.
Here in Australia, and I think in most parts of the world, the school guidance counsellor, the career counsellor, probably doesn't list become a jazz musician as one of their key bullet points. Have you considered? Do you want to be a chemist? Do
No,
you want to be a lawyer? Yeah, it's not normally in the list. So
jazz bass. So
that's
yeah,
so
no.
that jazz bass. That's exactly right. What's some of your thoughts? I mean, one of the first questions that I'm often asked is it better to specialise or diversify? What's your thoughts on that, looking ahead, today's world, but probably also looking 10, 20 years ahead? We can't predict the future.
Interesting. Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that you can have everything, but maybe not all at the same time. So there's nothing wrong with like taking time to really dig deep into a thing, whatever that is. Maybe it's an instrumental playing or composition, or because life is long, and that's the thing. It's that it may not be all happening simultaneously, but you will find and be really open to opportunities as they show up. Because sometimes the universe is saying, whispering like, hey, come this way. Like you'll get an opportunity to do something that maybe you hadn't even imagined you would do. Just follow it, like follow the trail, follow the path.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can't see too far in front of you. You just have to like keep it going, because this whole career is absurd and I couldn't have dreamed it for myself. So I don't think it's wise to have too many preconceived notions about what it is you think you want, because the universe has a funny way of turning that into a comedy. Like, oh, you think you want this, but I'm going to make this happen now.
Good
And all
advice.
of a sudden you're
Good
like,
advice.
bonk. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm
Yeah.
now living somewhere
Yeah.
in a strange place doing weird things that I
Yes.
never imagined.
Yeah.
So just to stay open and also to understand in 2025, the reality is that you have to have a few hats that
Yeah.
you wear in
Mm.
order to make a living. But when you figure out what hats you like to wear, but you have to try different things to know what hats you wear. So
Exactly.
a lot of experimentation, a lot of trying stuff out. Eventually, the stuff that lights you up, you'll know what those are, and you'll get good at that because, it'll light you up. So for me, it was always education, playing. The band leading, writing, record label thing, I couldn't have imagined that. Just sort of, there were some things that opened up that I said yes to, and I very nervously said yes to, but then I got a lot of positive responses about my composition, but I didn't have the imagination to imagine that that would be something I might be good at. It was like that's for other people. But then life happens and you get opportunities. You're like, oh, actually, I really enjoy this. And like, I'm not super prolific. I'm not writing every day. And there's people who do that, but it's part of the mosaic of, my artistic life. So just don't worry about it, but take care of the art. Like dig in to learning and going deep into whatever it is you like. If you like guitar, like hang out with your guitar, like develop that relationship with the
Yeah.
guitar. If you like recording,
Yep.
spend time recording. If you love the history of things, like watch movies and read books and
Yes.
and like learn about the how things like the ethnomusicology piece or the historical piece, like all of that has potential pathways that you might not even know exist yet. So whatever's calling your heart's getting pulled towards, you just follow those leads. In order for the money to show up, there's some like professional etiquette no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you show up prepared,
Yeah.
you show up on time, you treat people with respect, you want to be genuinely like a kind of a good person to be around,
Yeah.
just respond to emails, try and be professional in your communication with people. And the earlier you start to do that, that goes a long way to opening up opportunities because people will think of you for stuff that's what happened to me when Bramwell called and said, "Hey, do you want to start a jazz program?" And
Yeah.
it was mainly I'd played with him, and it was mainly because of the conversations we had, but I delivered professionally for him, so he knew he could rely on me.
And
And
building a
so,
reputation. It's funny, earlier you
yeah,
said you've just done a record with Scott Hamilton. One of
yeah.
the, I go back 40 years, maybe 50 years. I've still got it somewhere. One of Scott's first Concord albums. What was he
Wow.
playing? Swing tenor sax. What's Scott playing nowadays? Swing tenor sax.
Swing tenor
The
sax.
minute you say Scott Hamilton, there is no doubt. It's like saying Tommy Emmanuel guitar, acoustic guitar.
Totally.
There's no confusion as to what
No.
Scott has done in his life, and it's a credit to him. And there's one example of a very defined path, and he stuck with it. But there's so many other ways of doing it. That's
Totally.
fantastic. That is fantastic advice, Jodi. We're going to go out. It is obviously through the COVID era because you're all wearing masks, but there's a great version. You're just performing it again at I don't know, a jazz club somewhere. A great version of On a Clear Day. It's an all-female group with a male drummer, and you get to take a pretty extended bass solo, and it's a very physical solo. This one, when I looked at it, I thought, oh, this brings back all of those things. Has she wore her fingers out? Does it wear her fingers out? Because you are really, you're not struggling with the instrument, but you're up at quite hard in this one. You are pushing that solo out because the song demands it. But it's a great example of you sticking with your journey. That bass, I bet you if you look back, there must have been 20, 30, 40 times where you'd hit a pivot and think, is this for me? You know, I'm
Yeah.
really
Oh,
working hard. Like even
yes.
physically I'm working hard.
Yes, it's a hard instrument.
Oh, it's a hard instrument.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
a credit to you. But just before we go out with that, I just want to say thanks for sharing so much information today. It's been wonderful to have you on the
Oh, thank
podcast.
you.
You're doing so much incredible stuff out there, and you are setting an example for all people, I think, who you're
Oh,
proof
thank you,
that,
Brian.
well, it's wonderful, mate. You're proof that you can lead a happy and successful life, a creative life. So thanks very much for being part of the series.
I hope to come and see you in person one day, Brian. Hopefully
Absolutely.
we'll cross.
We'd love to have you down.
All
So
right,
here's,
thank you for the
here's,
conversation.
thank you. Here's On a Clear Day.
Rise and look around you, and you'll see just who you are. On a clear day, how it will astound you that the glow of your being outshines every star. You'll feel blood of every mountain, sea, and shore. You can hear from far and near a world you've never heard before. And on that clear day, you can see forever and ever and evermore.
For the collaboration video for this episode, Jodi asked if we could play a duet version of the jazz standard The Autumn Leaves. This song holds a special place for Jodi, as she tells me it's the very first song she ever learnt to play on the jazz acoustic bass. Please enjoy our duet version of The Autumn Leaves, featuring Jodi on the instrument that she's made a lifetime career with, the jazz bass, and I'm playing the clarinet.